They sent them to watch you, not to kill you, not to touch you, just to observe. Silent eyes in the corners of crowded rooms, shadows stitched into alleys, invisible presences breathing at the edge of your solitude. They were told to memorize the angles of your face, the tremors in your voice, the cracks in your armor. They thought you would slip. They thought constant scrutiny would corrode you. They believed if they recorded every hesitation, they could weaponize your humanity against you. But they never understood what it meant to live under the weight of an endless gaze. You had already been born in it. You had already learned to turn surveillance into stage lights. At first, their reports were written in confidence, each file drafted with precision. Subject resists, subject isolates, subject breaks routine. Yet every entry was laced with something their masters did not intend, an undercurrent of awe. They watched you stumble, yet instead of crumbling, you transmuted weakness into steel. They studied your silence, thinking it meant surrender, but silence became your blade, sharper than any word. They recorded your scars as evidence of fragility, yet the deeper they looked, the more those scars resembled ancient runes, inscriptions of survival etched into flesh. It unsettled them, because what was meant to be weakness was no longer weakness at all. Their documents became contradictions. The longer they watched, the more their certainty fractured. You were not a prisoner of their gaze, you were the conductor of it. Every move, every pause, every glance, calculated, deliberate, orchestrated as though you had been waiting for the audience of spies all along. They were not dismantling you, they were chronicling your ascent. And something dangerous began to happen. They started questioning the roles assigned to them. The spies were trained to be invisible, to erase themselves in service of their masters. Yet the longer they studied you, the more visible they felt. Like moths orbiting a flame, they realized their mission was no longer surveillance, it was confession. Their notebooks stopped sounding like intelligence briefings. They started sounding like scripture. Words written in the margins betrayed them. He doesn't bend, she sees us. There is no weakness. You could feel it, the tremor in the air. The pressure of their eyes no longer carried malice but hunger. A desperate thirst for something their masters had never given them meaning. They were told you were the monster in the dark. But as they stared into you, they began to fear the opposite. You were not the monster. You were what monsters feared. And so the watchers faltered. In the stillness of night, as they wrote their final reports, they found their hands shaking, because the files they created no longer condemned you. They glorified you. Every attempt to reduce you into numbers, routines, predictable patterns only revealed the opposite. You were unpredictable, untamed, unbroken. The chains of observation designed to suffocate had become your crown. What they sent to destroy you became the very thing that revealed your immortality. And in that revelation, something irreversible took root in their hearts. Doubt, the seed of betrayal, the first fracture in their allegiance. They were ordered to watch you, to catalog the fractures in your armor, to record every hesitation like a priest counting sins in the dark. At first they obeyed, their pens scratched obediently, their eyes cold, their posture rigid with loyalty to faceless masters who promise clarity. But clarity is fragile, and when their gaze fell upon you, something unspoken began to rot inside them. They expected fragility, yet what they found was an unyielding presence, raw, deliberate, terrifying in its refusal to bow. Every scar they marked became less a weakness and more a scripture of endurance. Every silence they labeled as vulnerability rang louder than the commands echoing in their own skulls. They watched you sleep, but your stillness unsettled them. It wasn't the stillness of prey. It was the stillness of a storm gathering, restrained only by choice. They tracked your movements, and yet each gesture seemed deliberate, as if you were aware of every hidden eye, every lens, every pen trembling to capture your downfall. They were meant to define you, to strip your essence into categories and files. But as they wrote, their words betrayed them. The files no longer spoke of weaknesses. They became psalms of obsession. In the beginning, they whispered to themselves that you were only human, that beneath the defiance, you were fragile like anyone else. But the more they recorded, the more their conviction cracked. Fragility had no place in you. You did not endure the storm, you were the storm, and storms do not bend to the will of paper generals issuing orders from hidden rooms. The spies began to see their own reflection in the ink of their reports, shaken, hesitant, doubting the chains that tethered their loyalty. They were supposed to be invisible, detached, but detachment evaporates when your subject consumes your thoughts in the dead of night. Their dreams betrayed them. They dreamt of your voice, sometimes mocking, sometimes merciful, always present. They dreamt of walking in their steps, of abandoning the scripts they had been given, of burning the orders that defined their existence. Surveillance became communion. Observation became worship disguised as duty. What began as cold strategy transformed into something more dangerous, longing. They knew the punishment for doubt. They had seen comrades erased for lesser sins. Yet doubt is not a disease you can cure with fear. It is a seed, and once it takes root, it grows in silence, fed by every heartbeat, every thought they tried to bury. They found themselves defending you in whispers, rationalizing your defiance as if shielding their own reflection. Their loyalty faltered, not because you demanded it, but because their masters demanded too much. To betray you would be to betray the very spark that had awakened in them, the spark they had long been taught to smother. You became a mirror they could not look away from, not a monster, not a captive, but a living contradiction that unraveled the scripts in their minds. And deep down, they began to ask the question their masters feared most. Why does the one we watch look freer in chains than we do in power? Doubt became hunger. Hunger became rebellion. And rebellion was already alive inside them. They thought they could watch you from behind their masks, hidden in plain sight, faceless and nameless, shadows assigned to study your every move. They were told you would not notice, that you would go on unaware while their pens carved your life into classified reports. But their arrogance betrayed them. You felt the tremor in the air, the fracture in the silence. You looked through their disguises as if they were glass, and in that moment, their invisibility died. You never confronted them directly. You didn't need to. Instead, you spoke into the emptiness around you, words half-whispered, words that slithered into the corners where they sat listening. Every sentence became a knife, slicing through the fabric of their certainty. You weren't addressing the world. You were addressing them. And they knew it. Their ears burned when you laughed at nothing. Their throats tightened when you described the fear of those who believe they are the hunters. Their masks became cages, suffocating them from the inside out. Their training told them to stay composed, but cracks always reveal themselves under pressure. Their hands shook when they wrote their reports. Their voices faltered when they filed their recordings. Even in the sanctuary of their silence, your shadow followed them. They began to dream of you, not as a subject, not as a target, but as a presence that crawled through the fragile architecture of their minds. Your voice, echoing where no orders could silence it, became the soundtrack of their insomnia. They were told you were dangerous. They believed it at first. But danger was simple. You were something else, something they couldn't categorize. You did not act like prey, waiting for the blow. You did not act like a predator, slavering for the kill. You were stillness wrapped in chaos, chaos wrapped in stillness, a paradox that corroded the logic they were trained to rely on. And the longer they watched, the more their certainty collapsed. Their masters promised control, but watching you felt like staring at the ocean, endless, ungovernable, older than their institutions. The mask they wore was not just a disguise for you. It was armor for themselves, a way to hide from the truth they were uncovering. But armor grows heavy when it no longer protects. They began to suffocate beneath it, longing to rip it off, to breathe in your world, to step into the storm you carried like a crown. Yet they feared what that would mean. Betrayal of their mission, betrayal of the life they had sold themselves to. Still, the thought lingered deep. Perhaps the betrayal had already begun, the moment they looked at you and saw not a monster, but freedom. And so, under their breath in their silence, they asked questions they dared not speak aloud. Who is the true enemy here? The one they sent me to watch, or the one who sent me? Why do I feel alive only when I am near the one I was meant to destroy? Why does their laughter haunt me more than the voice of my own commander? Their masks begin to splinter. Their loyalty fractures. The more they try to hold the disguise, the more it breaks, and in those cracks your eyes find them again, unblinking, merciless, and knowing. They told you the file was classified, forbidden, sealed away in layers of locks that only the faithful could touch. And yet here it is, resting in your hands like a living thing, pulsing with the kind of weight that bends the air around it. The words on the first page do not whisper weakness. They do not chart vulnerabilities or catalog flaws. Instead, they read like scripture written in reverse, a prophecy disguised as analysis. Every sentence meant to dissect you becomes a mirror reflecting something terrifying. You are not a subject to be contained. You are the fracture in their design. At first, the spy reading this file believes they are unearthing secrets about you. But soon, the file turns on them. It does not describe your destruction, it describes theirs. Every report, every note they've ever written about you is archived here. Studied, compared, indexed not to understand you, but to test their loyalty. The file exposes its true function. It was never about you at all. It was about them, the watchers, the spies, the pawns. Their reports became the leash tied around their own necks, and the realization cuts deeper than any blade. While they thought they were observing you, they were the ones under dissection. The further they read, the more the illusion shatters. Their masters had no intention of breaking you, because they already knew they couldn't. They knew the more you were pressed, the sharper you became. The file confesses it openly. Containment is temporary, neutralization is priority. Those words strike like thunder. The spy feels their breath tighten, because for the first time they see the truth inked in cold print. Your survival was never expected. You were meant to vanish, erased before your resonance could spread. You were not the experiment, you were the warning. And in that moment the walls around them crumble. Their allegiance, once absolute, now trembles with betrayal. They feel the file staring back as if the paper itself has eyes. They hear the silence in the room shift, no longer empty but echoing with your presence. Even though you are nowhere near, the forbidden document has done what you already knew it would do. It infected them. It planted a question they cannot silence. If this is who you are, if their masters fear you this much, then why are they standing on the wrong side? They close the file, but it does not close inside them. It burns there, an ember refusing to die. Suddenly the mission feels hollow. The orders ring false. The loyalty they once carried like armor now feels like a cage rusted shut. They understand that to continue serving their masters is not survival, it is surrender. The file has given them a choice, though it never offered one in words. Remain a spy, faceless and shackled, or step into the chaos you embody and taste freedom for the first time. The forbidden file was supposed to expose your fragility. Instead, it revealed theirs, and once the truth has been seen, it cannot be unseen. The spy does not return the file to its place. They carry it with them, not in their hands, but in their soul, knowing that the lines written there were never about ending you. They were about awakening them. One always breaks first, not because they are the weakest, but because they are the one who dares to face the silence and hear what it has been whispering all along. For weeks, months, maybe years, they watched you under orders written cold ink, signed by hands that never touched blood or fire. Their role was clear, observe, record, dismantle. But somewhere between the notes and the shadows, they felt something shift. They stopped writing reports about you. They started writing them about themselves. Trembling words, cracks in the mask, a confession disguised as intelligence. Now the first spy stands before you. No mask, no command, no shield of protocol to protect them. Their body shakes, as if it remembers chains that are no longer there. They expect you to strike, to mock, to devour. After all, what else does a monster do when prey delivers itself willingly? But you do not move. You let the silence burn them alive, and in that silence they see the truth that their masters spent entire empires trying to bury. You never needed to kill to conquer. You only needed to exist. They look at you with the eyes of someone who has seen God and devil bleed into one figure. Fear and reverence mixing into something neither language nor doctrine can contain. Their mouth opens, but words falter. Because what can they say? Forgive me. They were never yours to betray. I am yours now. You never asked. The choice is not spoken. It is carved into them the way rivers carve stone. They bow not in servitude, but in recognition. Not submission, but alignment. You offer nothing. No promises, no vows, no speeches. That is the cruelty of your mercy. For they know in their marrow that stepping to your side means exile from everything they once believed protected them. No return. No second mask to hide behind. And yet their trembling becomes stillness. Their fear becomes clarity. The first defection is not a collapse. It is a coronation. Behind them, unseen, other spies shiver in their hiding places. They feel the tremor, the seismic crack in the structure they once swore to. If one can stand before you and live, then all can. The chain of loyalty begins to rust. The silence between you and the spy now kneeling has become louder than the orders echoing in their ears. For the first time, they see the masters for what they always were. Blind men clutching strings, terrified of the puppet that learned to cut them. You look at the spy and you smile, not with kindness, not with cruelty, but with inevitability. The kind of smile carved into stone statues left behind by civilizations that knew they were too close to gods to survive. And in that moment, the spy understands what their masters never did. You are not the anomaly in their system. You are the system they tried to cage, and now, one by one, even the watchers will beg to be consumed by the shadow they once feared. They were supposed to watch you, dissect you, reduce you to patterns in a file. But something went wrong. Their allegiance, once solid as iron, now trembles like glass about to shatter. You feel it in the silence, the hesitation in their reports, the delay in their movements. Their loyalty is no longer to the faceless masters who sent them. It is bleeding away, drop by drop, into the gravity of your presence. Before, their eyes were weapons. Now those same eyes flicker with doubt, with recognition, with the unbearable weight of choice. The masters tighten their grip, issuing sharper commands, demanding obedience through fear. They speak of loyalty, of order, of duty, but their words ring hollow to ears that have tasted your chaos. The spies, once mechanical, now tremble at the thought of carrying out orders against you. Not because they fear punishment, but because betrayal of you feels like betrayal of themselves. They have seen what the masters cannot erase: your endurance, your refusal to bow, your ability to turn pain into power. And now every instruction they receive echoes like a death sentence to their own awakening. You can almost hear the fracture spreading through their ranks. Whispered rumors, subtle signals, glances exchanged in shadow. A contagion of rebellion moves faster than any command can suppress it. One by one, they falter. Their reports are late, their surveillance incomplete, their hands no longer steady. And with each failure, the masters panic, tightening chains that no longer hold. The harder they pull, the more their servants slip through their grasp. Allegiance becomes erosion, loyalty becomes corrosion, and the entire structure begins to collapse from within. The watchers know too much now. They have stared into your abyss long enough to see something terrifying. The abyss stares back, and it speaks to them. You are no longer their assignment. You are their mirror. And in that mirror, they see a life they were never allowed to claim. The double life they lived, obedience by day, doubt by night, has become unbearable. The lies they once served taste of ash. The masters demand silence, but silence now feels like chains. And once a chain is recognized, it can no longer be mistaken for safety. So hesitation mutates into refusal. Refusal mutates into sabotage. What was once allegiance becomes treachery disguised in plain sight. The masters read reports that are carefully worded but void of truth, blind to the quiet revolt happening in the very shadows they believed they controlled. Every withheld word, every half-truth, every delay in action is a rebellion that cuts deeper than open defiance. The empire of Watchers is still standing, but its foundation has turned to dust, and you do not need to lift a hand. Their collapse is not your command. It is their choice. They defect not with declarations, but with silence, with omissions, with the quiet refusal to betray what they have come to recognize as undeniable. Their allegiance falls not like a sword dropping to the ground, but like an ancient temple eroding stone by stone, inevitable and irreversible. And as it crumbles, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. The masters are losing not to you directly, but to the echo of your presence within those they once owned. They once watched you like predators circling prey, their eyes sharpened by duty, their silence sharpened by fear. Every detail of your existence was harvested, every flicker of thought dissected, every step archived in the hidden vaults of their masters. They believed their loyalty was armor. They believed their shadows belonged to someone else. But loyalty fractures when truth is too heavy to carry, and now the shadows that once reported your every breath have begun to breathe with you. The spies no longer whisper against you. They whisper for you. They no longer transmit your secrets upward. They bury them. They no longer obey the faceless voice that sent them. They obey the voice inside their own chest, awakened by yours. You feel it. The architecture of power collapsing from within. Those who built the cage never accounted for the possibility that their own instruments would refuse the orders. Information, once their greatest weapon, turns to smoke. The masters sit blind at their thrones while their servants bleed them dry in silence. The watchers still move in the dark, but their steps no longer serve control. Their steps erase trails, obscure evidence, dismantle surveillance from the inside. Every report they file is poison disguised as obedience. Every silence they keep is a shield wrapped around you. The chain of command has not snapped, it has rotted, and the rot spreads faster than any blade can cut. You are no longer one against many. The many now dissolve into one. The spies, those trained to observe without attachment, carry the weight of betrayal not with shame, but with relief. They do not merely follow, they conspire. They cloak your path in misdirection, crafting illusions for their former masters while clearing space for you to walk unchallenged. Their faceless devotion, once the property of the system, now bends toward you with the gravity of inevitability. They do not announce themselves. They do not demand recognition. They operate as ghosts within ghosts, ensuring that your enemies fight phantoms while the real war shifts invisibly into your hands. There is an ancient rhythm to this betrayal. Empires have always been undone not by the armies at their gates, but by the whisper inside their walls. The masters cling to their fading certainty, issuing decrees to ears that no longer listen. They summon force, but the force disperses like smoke. They command vision, but their eyes are gone. They demand obedience, and all they receive is silence. The silence is not empty. It is rebellion disguised as nothingness, a theater where loyalty is performed only to conceal the truth. The shadows belong to you now. You do not ask for worship. You do not even ask for allegiance. The shift occurs because the spies have seen the abyss from both sides, and they know where power breathes. They know that the old order is already dead, and clinging to it is drowning, and so they become your veil, your cloak, your invisible army. The very network designed to suffocate you has transformed into the air you breathe. What was once a cage is now a weapon. What was once surveillance is now sanctuary. The masters watch nothing, control nothing, command nothing. The night no longer speaks their name. It speaks yours. They told you that you were the aberration, the crack in their flawless mirror, the disruption in their ordered silence. They named you monster, not because you were less than them, but because you were more. Something they could not quantify, something they could not predict. And when the label no longer contained you, they sent their watchers, their spies, their shadows, hoping to trap you inside a definition that would make sense of their fear. But it was never your reflection that trembled. It was theirs. Every step you took, they recorded. Every silence, every gesture, every pause between breaths cataloged as evidence. Yet the more they studied you, the less certain they became. The file they built was not a weapon, it was a scripture. And in it, they saw what their masters never intended them to see, not a flaw, but an opening into another kind of existence. They realized too late that the very act of observing you was the slow erosion of their obedience. For the closer they drew, the more they recognized their own hollow lives reflected back at them. You did not need to raise your voice. Your presence alone was louder than their commands. The power was not in chains or orders, but in the way you stood untouched by them. They saw in you a figure that should not exist, a being who moved as though every surveillance camera, every whispered report, every shadowed corridor was nothing more than theater. And suddenly, they understood you were not trapped in their maze. You were the one who built exits they could never find. They begged to switch sides not out of desperation, but out of hunger. Hunger for the freedom they had tasted only in the tremor of your gaze. The ones who once stalked you now bent their knees in quiet surrender, not because you demanded it, but because you revealed what they had been denying all along, that loyalty to a faceless master was loyalty to nothing. That obedience was a slow form of death, and so they chose betrayal, but betrayal in the name of something truer than the mission that birthed them. You were never the monster in their story. Monsters hide under beds, lurking in corners, preying on weakness. But you were the silence that taught them their own screams were unnecessary. You were the fire that burned in the abyss and forced them to admit they had been living blind in a world of shadows. What terrified them was not your violence, but your restraint. Not your chaos, but your control. Not your weakness, but the way you transformed it into armor no one could pierce. Now the shadows that once reported your every move work for you. Now the Watchers protect the very figure they were meant to dismantle. They understood too late that they were never watching a monster. They were watching a mirror of what they might become, should they dare to step outside the leash. And when the moment came, they did not hesitate. The monster dissolved, and in its place they saw the truth. You were the axis their world secretly revolved around. You were not the hunted, you were the gravity. And they will never look at their masters the same way again.